What's up, guys, and welcome into another episode of Skers Scoop here. It is Tuesday at about 7:30. We are recording this, and Nebraska plays their spring game on Saturday at 11. So it's a busy week for football here. They have a ton of visitors, and it's been a little bit overshadowed by the basketball season, obviously for a good reason here, with Nebraska getting ready to play in the Sweet 16 against Iowa. But we're here to talk to you guys about some football here. So we'll get started. We're going to open it up, kind of go position by position with the visitors that are expected to be in town. Obviously, things can change here, but just going off the top here, Nebraska is set to have 3 visitors in the 2028 class for quarterbacks. I guess personally where I would start, Elliot, here would just be going and reminding people that Nebraska did not sign a 2026 quarterback. At one point, it did look like they were going to, and obviously things kind of fell through at the last moment there. So do not expect that to happen again anytime soon. Obviously, there is the transfer portal, but Nebraska still wants to make it a priority to get in on a quarterback early on in a cycle. And you're seeing it with Trey Taylor. Obviously, he was one of the first, if maybe he was the first commit in the class. So
yeah.
Just being able to have that peer recruiting aspect, they really want to filter that through their quarterback. So I think they're really trying to get in early and identify their guy and kind of try and recreate that. But yeah, I guess just offer your thoughts maybe on, I guess the visitors, I'm sure you've maybe talked to a couple of them at some point here.
Yeah. So I just 2 guys right off the bat. I think it's Trayvon Towns from California.
Nice.
He's coming in. We've had him come in a few times. This is going to be his third visit. I think he may actually be coming in on, what day is it? 26th. So is that Thursday? Yeah. So he's coming a little bit early in the week. He's kind of emerged as a target, I think, for a while, or he's been a target for a bit. So he's kind of on the Trey Taylor, I think, like timeline of getting the visits in the fall, then coming in during the spring. But then we got another guy that's coming in for the huddle. That's Caden Kraft. I think that's what. Yep. And this will be his first visit. He's from North Carolina. I'm sure he's definitely excited to come in. He's just responded to one thing I said on Instagram and kind of just like said, can't wait. So I'm sure he's excited for the huddle thing and then getting on campus. We had Trey committed last year in about May. I feel like if we want that type of timeline with a quarterback again, I'm not sure that Caden Kraft would be able to be on that timeline just because this is going to be his first visit and it's almost April already. I mean, crazy things have happened. But yeah, and then did you say there was a third? You got a third quarterback?
Yeah, there is a third that is expected to be in here. He is unranked. I believe his name is Grayson Thurston.
Okay.
He's out of Michigan. And, right now his offer list is not really super impressive. Obviously, he's kind of a fast riser lately, but, his timeline recruiting wise has definitely been slower than the other guys. I think Trey Towns is a 3-star. And then the Caden Kraft, he's a 4-star. He's the highest rated of the group, obviously. But Thurston, yeah, he's unranked. I think right now it's kind of Bowling Green and Toledo maybe are the schools that are kind of leading the pack there. So, I think Nebraska is more or less just gauging their interest here. I don't necessarily think that that he would be here right now unless it was for the huddles for him. But we'll see how it goes. That's the nice thing, and I guess we kind of forgot to mention it at first, but obviously Nebraska is having the huddles future forum here for the second year, I do believe.
Yep.
Last year they had it in the summer, and this year I guess they just kind of got with Nebraska here and figured out that the best time to do it was during the spring game, which I think is super advantageous just in general for the Huskers and what they're trying to do recruiting wise. So they're trying to hopefully make that pay off. But yeah, I would say Trey Towns here, there's some serious stuff going on with Nebraska and him right now. So I think early on they're trying to identify him as their quarterback, but they obviously have a couple different options. And regardless, even if these guys aren't coming for the spring game, they've been extending offers within the 2028 class here over the past couple months. So they're definitely keeping their options open. So I guess, do you have any more comments on the quarterbacks, or we can go ahead and get into running backs then?
Yeah, let's move on to the running backs.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so running backs. There are two running backs. Obviously, one of them is Amir Brown, who is in the image here. He is Nebraska's 2027 commit. And Elliot, I mean, I'm definitely gonna have you talk about this, but I think there's a little bit of a vibe maybe that he is fishing around in exploring his options at least. Obviously, he's a really highly touted running back. He's a 4-star out of North Carolina, and you know. Other schools, Power 4 schools, I think Alabama just recently offered him maybe in March, and I do believe that he took a visit there. So he definitely has options. And then obviously it's going to be super exciting to talk about the 2028 commit. But yeah, just go ahead and offer your opening thoughts there.
Yeah, so Amir Brown got the offer. It might have been February. I'm not sure exactly sure what the month was, but he did get an offer from Alabama. I think he said it was like a dream school at one point, and I mean he immediately set up that visit,
Yeah.
and he went in. But what is kind of a good sign is nothing has really happened since then. I mean he's coming here for the spring game, but he didn't really hasn't visited Alabama again. Has been no predictions. I mean, at one point, Amir Brown was committed to North Carolina, and then he decommitted, was predicted to Notre Dame, and then now he's at Nebraska. So you could say his recruitment has been a roller coaster. So he's definitely a guy you want to hang on to, just because the relationship he has with Trey Taylor, Tay Ellis, and Matt Erickson, Troy Pittman, those guys that are already committed, just continue to build that and help build the class. Yeah, then I'll just get to the 2028 running back who's actually a 5-star, Zayden Jernigan from Mississippi. He's going to be coming with the huddle for him, but getting on campus a little bit. Yeah, he's a major 5-star. He's a 5-star running back. There's usually maybe 1 or 2 per cycle, and those are going to be like really good running backs. I think I saw I think he might be an Alabama lean at this point. I mean, it's super early on for 2028s. But I did see a few things on his page about Alabama, so I maybe look out for them, I guess, at this point. But I mean, it's super early on, and it's really good that we're getting them on campus.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I would say he's probably kind of a prime example of a guy that is mainly here for the huddle futures for him, and just so happens to be that Nebraska is going to get a free unofficial visit out of him. I saw when I was looking at his page, Notre Dame obviously is after him, and Alabama there. So two of the kind of historically great running back spots to land. So whether Nebraska can kind of get a foothold in there remains to be seen. But right now, I would say the most important thing is that they got Amir Brown back on campus and just kind of weathered the storm with him looking at other programs here. Question for you now, I would say, do you think there's any chance that Nebraska would take 2 running backs within the 2027 class? Obviously, they are looking and trying to kind of expand their board in 2028. But do you think maybe in the 2027 class that they would try and get 2?
That's kind of been like something that I've been going back and forth between yes and no for a while. I mean, this was a long shot, but they had Keeman Spell. I think he decommitted from Penn State, and he had said that Nebraska was an option. He's already committed to Georgia now. I'm not sure how big of an option we really were to him. But then we have Keelan Haney, who's an in-state guy. I do remember, I think I said, but Trey Taylor said something about that he still wanted Keelan Haney in the class, and he would know better than any of us who the staff wants to take in this class. And so who knows? I mean, the board isn't crazy. I mean, they did. Who was that guy recently that was going to commit in January, but he ended up not. I forget his name at this point, but there was a guy that was getting predictions to Nebraska in January. He was supposed to commit at one of those high school game, like the All American.
Oh, the All-Star games.
Like
Yep.
Yeah, he was going to commit there, and then ended up not. So I don't know if that was something like Nebraska was like, we don't have a spot for you or what. So I mean, it still remains to be seen if we're going to take 2, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I would say that's a good answer too. I definitely don't think like a Kylan Haney is anywhere near like a safe pick by any means. So he might not be quite as highly recruited, but he can still ball out. So I think that if Nebraska were if things ever truly started heating up with him, they would absolutely take him in the class as well. But I guess, yeah, we'll just kind of transition over to wide receiver here after that. Nebraska is expected to have 3 wide receivers on campus, and all 3 of them will be 4 stars. 2 of them actually are pretty close. Have Nebraska at the top of their list here, or close to it at least, at the very least. I think it's kind of a position that Nebraska has been treating lately. At least they've been going after kind of kids in the transfer portal and doing a really good job at that. And then also just over the offseason, they retained almost every single player that was on the roster from last year. So it's one of those positions. And then also, I guess, you forget that they added a late 2026 edition as well here, just maybe like a month ago or so. So that's a position that's really deep, and a lot of the top group can return, but it's one of those positions that they've shown they're more than capable of going and getting high level receivers. So I guess, if you want to just go ahead and get the outlook of the room, and then maybe, talk about how serious you think that Nebraska will continue to go after high school receivers versus transfer receivers, maybe just after this offseason.
Yeah. Wide receiver is probably one of the easier positions to recruit, just because there's so many of them. I mean, every year there's probably 40 4-star plus wide receivers. So it's plentiful. There's just choose one and you'll get a 4-star receiver almost every year.
Sure.
But I mean, I think they'll keep getting guys out of high school ranks. I mean, you got to. I mean, obviously transfer portal is big, and you want to get guys like Quasi Gilmer. But you always want to get guys like Larry Miles and Nayland Scott. Larry Miles, I mean, he's been balling out in spring ball so far. But yeah, you just want to get guys and keep bringing them in. I mean, right now they have Tay Ellis in the 27 class. And then they just got Caden Howard too. He's kind of an athlete, but he's probably playing receiver. But I feel like they do kind of need a bigger bodied guy, because Tay Ellis, I think he's like 6 foot. So he's not like small or anything. And then Caden Howard's a little bit smaller. So you probably want a big bodied receiver. Maybe a guy like Quinn Clark or Jeremiah Jones or something like that. Sure. Just a bigger body.
Yeah. I would, and honestly, that's where I was going to take it to. I was going to say, maybe you definitely have noticed, at least in the offers that they've been extending to the 2027 and 2028s, that they're kind of targeting a guy like Ja'Cory Barney, kind of to fit that type. Like Larry Miles kind of fits that role. I think even Caden Howard definitely kind of slots into that like slot wide receiver, the smaller, speedier, more athletic guy. But yeah, I think it's always nice to see a Jeremiah Jones type or a Quinn Clark. And I think those guys, if they can really kind of take a step this year, I think Nebraska is going to more and more aggressively start pursuing those guys, especially, obviously they play in the Big Ten, right? So like when it's November and it's cold out, and just seeing how physical these defenses are, like you want a guy that can go up and grab a 50-50 ball that is going to come down with it. And I think a Quinn Clark and a Jeremiah Jones are that kind of guy. But, hopefully they can add a guy like that in either 2027 or 2028 here, without any knock on Tay Ellis here. So I guess we'll go ahead and move on to tight end. I think here, this is super interesting, and obviously a big thing that, is going to be talked about here. Ahmad Hudson was expected to be in town, and now obviously things have changed. So Nebraska kind of keeps expanding its board within the 2027 class, but the 2 visitors that are expected to be in town here are in the 2028. So Elliot, if you just want to go ahead and give your outlook on that, and then I'll step in.
Yeah. We're going to be answering some questions later, so that's when we'll kind of get more into the Ahmad Hudson thing. So we'll kind of just stick with the 2 guys that are going to be in town. So we got Jevin Severson. He's an Iowa guy. This will be his 3rd time on campus. And then we got Xavian Brinson from Georgia. Probably butchered that, but yeah, it's his first visit. And I think he's with Huddle, and maybe Jevin Severson is as well. But yeah, two big time targets coming in. They're both pretty highly rated 4 stars. So yeah, those 2 would be big. I mean, as you can see, as I said, Severson's been on the campus 3 times already, and obviously he's from Iowa, so it's going to be easier for him to get on campus. But obviously, it's going to be hard to pull him out of Iowa. Iowa's produced a lot of NFL talent at the tight end position, so that's obviously going to be an easy recruiting pitch for them. But obviously, Nebraska they've done a decent job. We got Thomas Fedoni. I mean, technically, Nate Borkacher is going to NFL, and he was at Nebraska until he transferred to A&M. And then obviously we got Carter Nelson still in the wings, and we got Luke Lindenmeyer. So they've been doing some developing, and Satterfield has been he's been a decent recruiter. I mean, he's been doing a good job with Hudson so far. But yeah, we'll kind of see what happens with the tight end board with the 27 class and the 28 class.
Yeah, I agree. I would say just the only thing to add to that is Severson actually, on three metrics, well, both of them are really highly rated. Severson's the number 2 tight end in his class, and obviously having him so close, I think he's just in a suburb of Des Moines, maybe. Just having him, in the proximity to Nebraska and having that ability to get him back on campus and driving distance is a really big thing. I don't necessarily know how easy it's going to be to pry him out of either Iowa or Iowa State's hands there, with him being in state like that. But regardless, they're going to keep going after him, and there's really good reason for that. So moving on to the offensive line here, there are a lot of offensive linemen, and obviously Gene Wade and Lonnie Teasley are, really, 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 really aggressively pursuing high school recruits and just trying to start building up a pipeline. And they have reason to believe that they can bring these recruits in, and just based off of both of their prior history with development, there's reason for the recruits themselves to believe that they can be developed here at Nebraska now. So hopefully they're ushering in a new era of Nebraska football on the offensive line here, because we could really use it. So Elliot, if you just want to go ahead and maybe give a little bit of a rundown here. I know there's a lot, so but just if you can talk people through a little bit of what's going on here.
Yeah, so obviously we got the 2 5-star offensive tackles in the 27 class that are headlining this. We got 5-star Mark Matthews and 5-star. We're just gonna say Olu, just to he's got a pretty complicated name, but I don't want to butcher it, so we'll go with that. Mark Matthews is from Florida, and then we got Olu is from New Jersey. Both of them are going to have their second visits on campus. Mark Matthews, the last time he was on campus was last summer. I think it was around the time of the Boneyard Bash and that huddle form as well. His visit this week does not have to do with the huddle form. The huddle form, I think, is just exclusively 2028 guys. So yeah, it's going to be a big time visit for Mark Matthews, trying to secure an official visit. I think he said that he, is thinking of making an official, but nothing's locked in yet. So it's an ever-changing thing with recruiting with some of these guys. So trying to get an official visit locked up would be huge. And then Olu, who is recently just risen up the recruiting ranking charts. Getting him on second time this spring. I could be wrong, but I think it's second time this spring/winter.
Yes, it is.
So it'd be a big time visit for him too. And I think there's maybe 2 more guys in the 27 class. We got Nate Carson. That's going to be his second visit. He's an interior offensive lineman from South Carolina. Just another guy that you can add to that interior offensive line board that they have. They just have so many guys that have come, and it's honestly kind of hard to keep track how many guys they brought in this spring and winter. Yeah. And then the last guy in the 27 class is Barrett Cottrell, Nebraska guy. He's actually visiting twice this week. I think he's coming on Tuesday or Thursday, and then he's coming in again for the spring game. So that'll be an interesting to see if that's a take. I think that he's visiting twice this week. So I think it's a guy they want to take. We'll just see how many offensive linemen they end up taking in this class. And then quick 3 guys in the 2028 class. We got a 4-star interior offensive lineman, Bryce Smalls from Maryland. So this is going to be his 3rd visit, so that's big. And then Maui Tonata, I think, from Utah. This will be his 1st visit. And then another 4-star interior offensive lineman from Iowa, Carter Barrett. It'll be his 3rd visit here as well. So yeah, bunch of big-time guys, a bunch of 4-star offensive linemen. Definitely Jeep Wade and Lonnie Teasley kind of flexing their muscles, showing how many guys they can bring on campus. A few of those guys are coming for the huddle form in that 28 class. Like the first 2 I said, Bryce Smalls and Maui, they're coming in for the huddle form, but Carter Barrett is just coming in for the spring game. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. And honestly, I will say that, just piggybacking off of your Barrett Cottrell talk there, it would be nice to see him commit. Obviously, he's an in-state guy from Ashland Greenwood, so he's basically out of Nebraska's backyard here. But pairing him with Matt Erickson looks good. I also think both of them can play. Nebraska's not going to take a guy just to feel good anymore, especially with the roster limits. So anybody that they're offering and willing to put on a scholarship here is someone that they obviously think can play down the line here. So. I think, and looking at guys like Bryce Small and Maui Tanada, and even Carter Barrett, all three of those guys are 2028 kids that Nebraska is in good standing with, even if they're not necessarily just here for the spring game. They're here for, the huddle forum. Regardless, either way, they're super active on the offensive line, and that's very, very exciting. Here's to hoping that, the 2026 season, they can show how much they can develop. And on the players that not necessarily that they just brought in from the transfer portal. I think if there's more level play from an Elijah Pritchett here versus in 2025 where he was kind of up and down throughout the year. Obviously he was playing better towards the end of the year, but if he can become that consistent guy, they have tangible proof that they developed a guy that's going to potentially get drafted very high in the NFL draft. So that'll kind of do it for us on the defense or offensive side of the ball, and then we'll move to the defensive line. This is maybe the most important position for Nebraska this weekend, at least specifically with the Huddle Futures Forum. There's 11 different players on the interior. Then we separated this into the true interior defensive line and then edge rushers. So there's just 11 interior defensive linemen that are expected to show up on campus here. And the first one, the most notable, at least to Nebraska fans, would be Jaden Travers. He committed back in December. He was a big get at the time, and he is the Huskers' right now lone defensive lineman to be committed. So I think he chose Nebraska over Michigan and Miami. And it was kind of one of those things that he did live on TV. And it was a bit of a surprise at the time when it happened. But regardless, Nebraska's feeling good about that. And even though things have maybe been relatively quiet since then, it's good to see him back on campus. And then, there's a ton of 4-star guys that they're also bringing in that are some of them are kind of regional recruits from Minneapolis, I think, or that general area. There's just various ways that they stand with these recruits. But regardless, they're super active and they want to get high school guys, which I think is super exciting. So just give the rundown on the defensive line there.
Yeah, so honestly, it's really promising just seeing how many guys they're bringing in. There's even a 5-star defensive lineman coming into the 28 class. But yeah, there's a first-time visitor in the 27 class, which is Nehemiah Ambati from Minnesota. This will be his first visit. So, especially with getting the new D-line coach, Corey Brown, it's definitely, that D-line board's kind of reset a little bit, getting some guys in for the first time this spring. And then another guy, a 4-star defensive lineman, Zamar Tuk says, I think he tried to come in earlier in February or earlier in March, but I couldn't make it in just because I think of various travel reasons. And so it's good to see his name on the list. So hopefully he for sure makes it in because, we only had Dylan Barrymore in that last class with D linemen and, how the D line played last year. It was kind of concerning. So hopefully we can get some guys in this class. And then there's Jaden Travers, like you touched on, which is awesome to see him on campus. This is his first time on campus since committing. So, and then obviously it was a surprise to all of us when he committed. I mean, I don't think really anybody, even the national guys really knew he was going to commit. I mean, I hadn't really honestly heard his name before he had committed. So, but I'm glad he's part of the class. And then I think there's one more 3-star D lineman, Brock Frisbee from Maryland, who's also coming in. And then another one in the 27 class, which is Errol Demon Tognac. He's from Florida, and he's actually going to be his second visit this month. I think he's also we got maybe an official locked in, and he actually has been predicted in Nebraska. So if that one gets wrapped up this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised. And that'd be another good get, just another D lineman. And then obviously we got a 5-star and a 4-star in the 2028 class, both from North Carolina, Corey Cunningham and Azir Waddle. It'll be both their first visits on campus, and they'll be with the huddle for them. And so hopefully Nebraska can get a good first impression for those guys.
Yeah, there's a ton of options for sure, which is always nice, but hopefully, things can start heating up with some of those guys. I think it's going to be a big year for Corey Brown to show that the players, obviously Nebraska's kind of rolling a lot with the guys that they had last year, of course, with a couple transfer portal additions. So just seeing if a couple of those guys like a Jashir Whittington can maybe take the next step over the offseason would be super big. Riley Van Poppel, it's going to be a big year from him as well. So I think if they can do that, they'll show these 2027s and 2028s, even though the 27s will be, later on in the cycle, that there's reason to believe that they can be developed here in Nebraska, which is, obviously probably one of the most important things for these recruits, hopefully. So with that, I guess we'll just kind of transition over to the edge rushers here. Bringing in Roy Manning as well over the offseason. Nebraska's entire defensive line had, a coaching change here. And then they added the position coach in Roy Manning, who showed he can obviously coach football at a high level last year when he was at San Diego State. So I think it's one of those position groups, edge rusher is for Nebraska, that they have a ton of options. And they even saw, I'm blanking on his name, but the tight end that transitioned over to the edge.
Mac Markway.
Mac Markway. Okay, thank you for that. I think that's a super interesting guy as well, on top of a Williams Winery. They just have so many guys out there. Anthony Jones that they signed out of the transfer portal that I think can show progress there. And, moving to a 4-man front, I think that's definitely going to help. But Nebraska has the athletes now, and there's not really much of an excuse. So hopefully, Roy Manning has a good group of guys that can get the job done and then continue to kind of elevate that position nationally, showing how good of a coach he is, on the recruiting trail as well. So maybe just walk us through that group of kids that are expected to be in town.
Yeah, definitely going to be another, edges on that D line. Definitely with the new scheme, it's going to be important to have good edge rushers too, because getting to the quarterback wins you football games. We saw it in so many big games and the Super Bowls, national championships, where getting to the quarterback just won you the game. So, we got a 5-star edge, Darian Prescott, who actually isn't with the huddle for him. He's just coming on a visit because he wants to come. So that's good news. Roy Manning, I think, is going to be kind of, a secret weapon here. I think he can be a really good recruiter. Once he starts getting his, I think he used to be at Michigan at one point, and he had maybe he got Jabril Peppers or something, but yeah, he's going to be a good recruiter for us. And I think once he gets, acclimated back on that Nebraska staff, gets that board filled out, I think he can get some good guys on campus. And so we also got, these are all 2028 guys. Unfortunately, no 27, but that's fine. We got 4-star edge Elijah Tillman from Georgia. It'll be his first visit. And then we got 4-star edge Christian Webb Scott. He's from South Carolina. It'll be his second visit. And those last 2 guys are both coming with a huddle for him. So actually, let me check. I think maybe, those last 2 guys are coming with the huddle for him. So yeah, relatively new from all 3 of those guys. Will be first for 2 of them and second for the other, but definitely a good opportunity to make a good impact. Seeing Roy Manning's edge rushers live for, the guys that are going to go to the game. So yeah, that'll be big.
Yeah, I agree. Moving forward, we'll go ahead. I guess we don't have a banner for it, but that's okay. We'll talk about linebacker here. Nebraska hit the transfer portal very hard to get linebackers, this offseason here. And I think they did a really good job at doing so. So hopefully, that pays off. In Owen Chambliss and a Dexter Foster, even a Will Hawthorne, I think, can find his way into the 2D potentially, being a 4-star, that he was in high school. But regardless, I think Nebraska's linebacker room is very much improved from last year. They're way bigger than they were, and they have the opportunity to have this kind of group of guys for a couple of years, with Foster, Chambliss, and Vincent Shavers all being juniors. So it might not be necessarily the most, the biggest position of need by any means, but regardless, they have a good group of guys that are expected to be here on campus, with, Jameer Miles here kind of being the headliner guy of the 2028 class. But just go ahead and walk us through that.
Yeah, so we got a 2027 guy, Blake Benton, who's coming in. It'll be his second visit. This guy has been a rising target in the 27 class. It'll be from Minnesota. I think he was kind of like a Penn State or Iowa State lean at one point, kind of with like the Matt Campbell going to Penn State, kind of switched it up to Penn State. But nothing happened. He had like a bunch of predictions at some point, but nothing imminent happened. So that'll be a target to watch, I think, in the 27 class as a linebacker take. But then for the 2028, we got 4 names here. We got 4-star linebacker Jay Shell from Georgia. It'll be his first. I think he's going to be coming in with the huddle form. Then 4-star linebacker Jameer Miles from Illinois. That'll be his first visit. Then 3-star linebacker Stephen Moore from Florida will be his first visit as well. And then the last guy is 3-star linebacker Anthony Busby Jr. from Missouri. It'll be actually his 3rd visit on campus. So a lot of guys going to be first impressions in that linebacker room. Rob Dvorak has, done a pretty good job recruiting linebackers up to this point. I mean, with Dawson Merritt, I think he was here when we got Vincent Savers. I mean, he's gotten quite a big good guys, and he always obviously got Owen Chambliss, Dexter Foster, and Will Hawthorne in the transfer portal this past transfer cycle. So he's done a good job recruiting guys, and they played pretty well. So them coming on campus and if they're at the spring game, seeing what those linebackers can do will be good for them. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a prime opportunity to kind of show, and I think even Rob Orich, they said, is expected to kind of help at least in a practice setting, coaching the linebackers there. So having that familiarity and the opportunity to kind of get to work with your defensive coordinator on a daily basis at Nebraska could be a good kind of a recruiting pitch for them. But regardless, I think they'll see it on the play on the field this year that Nebraska is definitely much improved at the linebacker position, in 2026. Moving ahead to cornerback here. This is a position that obviously played very well last year. Surprisingly, I don't think anybody expected Nebraska to have, I think they ended up the regular season at least with the number 2 or 3 pass defense in the entire country.
Top 5
with,
for sure.
With passing yards allowed per game. So, while where the other defense lacked, at least in the secondary, they tried to make up for it for the majority of the season. And then, for reasons unknowns to us, it just didn't work out with John Butler. But regardless, Addison Williams is still here, and he's returning. He signed a 5-star in the 2026 class in Danny Odom, and now he's looking to do the same in the 2027. So just walk us through Juju Johnson and Keaton Fields, I believe.
Yeah, so we got Juju Johnson. He's going to be coming in for his 4th visit. He's from California, Long Beach Poly, which is just been kind of been a factory for putting out some high caliber guys. I think we had a guy, honestly, I blank on his name, so I won't bring it up. But I mean, he's been on campus 4 times, and I think that's the most out of any of those schools. He's been to Oklahoma 3 times, which he almost committed to Oklahoma and then didn't, which was awesome because, Nebraska was seen as a favorite for a while. And then Oklahoma kind of just came out of nowhere and almost picked him up. But, with him not committing, it gives Nebraska time to, make up that ground. And thankfully, he's getting in for a visit this spring because this will be his first visit in the spring/winter. And then I think he does have an official visit locked in as well. So, this is definitely a big target on Addison Williams' board. He's done a great job recruiting. If there's anybody on the staff that can, pull a high caliber guy like Juju Johnson, and it's going to be Addison Williams. We saw it last year with Danny Odom. It came down to the wire with him, but we still got it. And then you said it'll be a 4-star cornerback, Keaton Fields from Arizona. It'll be his first visit. He's coming in with a huddle form. Hopefully get a good first impression on him, and hopefully he'll be back sometime in the fall or maybe even the summer.
Yeah, it's definitely a position that has the opportunity to continue to be recruited really at a high level with any time, as long as Addison Williams on the staff. Nebraska is going to keep aggressively pursuing, some of the top corners within any class that he's here. And even you're starting to see that. Obviously, he's just coaching the cornerbacks this upcoming season because Nebraska added a true safeties coach in Tyler Yelk. But regardless, his recruiting has bled over, and once again, you're seeing one of the top safeties in the 2028 class in Giovanni Tuggle, flirting with Nebraska here, and the Huskers are really in a good spot with him at this time. Obviously, things can change with anybody in the 2028 recruiting class, but if you just want to go ahead and walk us through Giovanni Tuggle and Casey Barner here.
Yeah, so I'm honestly really excited to see how this goes. I mean, Casey Barnes the number 2 safety, and Giovanni Tuggle number 3 safety in the 28 class, according to 3. They're both 5 stars, and it'll be Casey Barner's 3rd time, and it'll be Giovanni Tuggle's 2nd time on campus. And they're both from Georgia as well, so maybe they're texting back and forth, potentially 2 here, thinking you want to be like this duo at safety for Nebraska for the next 4 years, or whenever they once they get on campus. So I mean, I would not be mad at landing a duo of 5 stars in the 28 class. They've definitely put themselves in a really good position with these two. Yeah, and I think they're both coming in with the huddle form too, but they're definitely going to tear out campus. I mean, they've both been on campus before. And Addison Williams and Tyler Yelk's probably got in a little bit with this too now, relatively new to the staff, but he's gonna get acclimated quick and start recruiting these guys. And then there's one guy from the 27 class, 4-star safety, Tavares Harrington from Illinois. It's gonna be his first visit. If you're not seeing him reported visiting by anybody else, it's because he told me himself. So you can trust me on that. He was supposed to come in earlier. It was February, March, but he had some travel issues and couldn't make it in. And so I know he was really looking forward to that visit, and so I'm glad he's getting in. It's going to be a tough battle with him. There's quite a few schools that are standing out to him. I'm pretty sure Notre Dame, Alabama are standing out to him. So, the big dogs. And so hopefully we can secure an official visit coming out of this weekend, because I know this is one of those guys that Trey Taylor wants to secure. I think they may even play in the same 7-on-7. But yeah. And he's a Mount Carmel kid too, so played with Cloud and Puma, and new wide receiver commit Jamari Brown as well. That'll be it.
Oh, okay. I was just going to add one more thing real quick here and say that Nebraska is obviously in a really good position at the safety position. Moving forward, obviously, Torrey Pittman is already in the class. He's committed.
Yeah.
I believe he's the number 2 safety in the 2027 class. So if they pair him up with, Tavares Harrington or Hughes, sorry, either way, if they do add another safety in the 2027 class, or they keep recruiting Tuggle and Barner here, the level of athlete at the safety position is definitely something worth noting for Nebraska. And now that Addison Williams here has some help with Tyler Yelk, who was just in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles for the past 4 or 5 seasons, I do believe. There's plenty of reason between those two guys that these players can come here and find success, because they've, Williams already proved it in his first year at Nebraska. So, okay, I'm going to give this next section to you, because this is kind of our mailbag here. So just go ahead and take that over.
So we got a few questions here, a few from Instagram, then we got one, kind of 2 that came from our YouTube. So the first one is this all Nebraska visits, or are you counting visitors coming from the huddle event too? So I'll just quick say, these are all, everybody that we talked to in this video, even the huddle guys are going to be coming on campus. The guys that are going to be at the huddle forum might not be on campus as much as the other guys, but they're definitely going to be on campus at some point. And it might be just, depending on how much some of those guys want to be on campus. Some of them might stay longer just because, they enjoy their time. And some guys might have to get back home for certain things too. So definitely everybody in the huddle forums is going to be on campus at some point in some capacity.
Yeah, it's just to add to that real quick, I would say that for Nebraska, this is definitely something that was done on purpose between them and Huddle here. Just with Huddle being in Lincoln, it's such a big asset to the university. So, within the NCAA regulations here, I think they're kind of getting a little bit of an assist here. But regardless, these kids, if they want to be on campus and they want to get the opportunity to meet these coaches, they will have the opportunity. All of them will be on campus at some point to some extent over the weekend. And then just obviously some kids are going to be there longer than others. So we'll see what happens. But either way, Nebraska's getting their first look at these kids, and some of these kids are getting their first look at Nebraska. And in the 2027 class, it seemed to work out pretty well. With some of their top targets there that they're still flirting with and doing very well with to this point in their recruiting stages. So they're hoping to do the same thing in the 2028 class. And this Huddle Futures Forum is a great opportunity for them.
Yeah. Next question is going to be probably the most asked question. Kind of got two parts of this. So we got a question that said, did we drop the ball to Ahmad Hudson? And then another comment from YouTube was from Niche Guru. He said, yeah, I just saw the visitor list, but no Ahmad Hudson. I wonder if he'll make any more trips out to Nebraska or if he's totally set on LSU. So he was supposed to come in for a visit for the spring game, but unfortunately he got selected. Well, fortunately for him, and it's a great accomplishment, but he was selected to it was a junior Olympic team or all USA team or something like that for basketball, which is a great accomplishment for him. Super happy for him. It's really unfortunate, that twice now he's had to have his visits canceled, and both of them unfortunately were for basketball. But we did, I would say, coming into the winter/spring, with the coaching change at LSU, Nebraska seized momentum in this recruitment. And it seemed like at any moment he could have committed, but he's super set on that July 4th date, and I don't think even LSU could change his mind on that. At this moment, I'd say LSU has closed that gap and maybe even overtaken Nebraska at this point, especially since he hasn't made a visit to Nebraska in the spring/winter. Trey Taylor has said that that if anybody thinks they're going to get Ahmad Hudson besides Nebraska, they're crazy. I really hope that he's right, because this would be an insane get, not only for football, but for basketball as well. And, you'd hope that the success that the basketball team is having this year also and changes or makes them think about it a little bit more. Especially since, LSU's basketball team I know is not very good. So, just a thought provoking for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it's one of those things. Obviously, it's really unfortunate that he hasn't been to. I don't think he's been back on campus since the USC game, if I'm right, that I know of at least. So obviously it's been a couple months since then, and things towards the end of the football season looked like Nebraska was in firm control of his recruitment, and I think everyone that's listening obviously knows that Ahmad Hudson appears to be a generational athlete here in both sports. So I think Nebraska, the way Nebraska's been playing in the NCAA tournament, only helps their cause. And at this point specifically in time, I would say that it's a good thing that Ahmad Hudson is so set on that July 4th date, because Nebraska needs time to get him back on campus right now. So I think the longer, assuming that he doesn't change his mind and commit early, the longer, and as each day passes closer to that July 4th date, I think Nebraska is just going to keep heating things back up with this recruitment, because at one point it did look like he was going to commit. And, obviously he's proved and shown enough on social media and, just in person when he's on campus that obviously he enjoys being at Nebraska. So hopefully Nebraska can lock that one down, because they're staring at a potential generational tight end and forward on the basketball court as well.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say too is during April, I think they do have the coaches can do in-home visits or something like that. They can go visit the recruits. So that would be good. Just, coach get out there and talk to Hudson, and it's not as good as getting him on campus, but it's still something showing him that you care. You take a time out of your day to go visit a recruit always stands out to them. So, I guess we'll jump into the next question, which is, what are you most excited to see out of the spring game? And I guess we can kind of talk a little bit about this, but we also we'll talk a little bit more about the spring game at the end. But I guess we both are kind of saying kind of the same thing. We both are excited to see Anthony Colandrea play.
Yeah. I would just to piggyback off of that, I think anytime you ask anybody, what they're going to say is obviously everyone wants to see Anthony Colandrea because no one's ever seen him in a Nebraska uniform. They did have a media availability I was able to go to practice and see what was going on, and he obviously looked very much like the starting quarterback, just in the way he moved and operated. And I do think, you've heard Holgerson say that he's picking up the offense at a high level right now, and everyone on the defensive side of the ball is being asked about Colandrea. And I don't necessarily think anybody's going to say anything bad about him, teammates or coaches wise, but regardless, all you're hearing is that how good of a job he has and the ability he has to extend plays. And I think that's something, that Nebraska's been missing a lot since the likes of, an Adrian Martinez. I know Casey Thompson had his highlights here and there, but it's going to be fun to get back to watching a player that can make plays, when nothing's there. So, and kind of create for himself. So that's the obvious answer. And that's what I would say for the both of us is Anthony Colandrea.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about the spring game once we get to that part. But last question here is it seems like every year we host a bunch of 5-star recruits and never land any of them. Do we have a legitimate chance to get any of this weekend's visitors? And this is one from YouTube. Last year, right here, Danny Odom. We secured a 5-star. At the time, he wasn't a 5-star, but he climbed the ranks super fast. I think around the time he committed, he was maybe a 3-star, and then he rose to a 4-star, then a 5-star pretty quick. He had over 40 offers. This guy is competing for a starting job already, and the coaches were raving about him. He came in. They're kind of, I think maybe guys were concerned about, is he going to have enough weight on? Is his frame going to be good? And I don't know if he's 200, but I know that they're saying that he is well ready, very ready to play. And so, we have a lot of 5-stars that we've been going after in this class. Trey Taylor can even end up as a 5-star. And Toy Pittman's been flirting with that 5-star. He's been a 5-star most of the cycle. And so I think a lot of people are probably talking about offensive linemen. And you got Mark Matthews, Olu, Kennedy Brown. They've all made their visits. Kennedy Brown, Mark Matthews have said that they may set up an official, and then maybe Olu will say the same thing after this weekend. They're 5-star offensive tackles. You're not going to just be able to secure that high caliber of a player just like that. It's going to take a lot of, it's going to take everything. It's going to send a full house. You're going to have to get everybody on these guys, and it's going to go down to signing day with these type of guys because there's going to be a lot of money thrown at them too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the one thing that I would really like to point out to people is I don't think there's a lot of understanding that when these players are coming on unofficial visits, they're actually paying to get here by themselves. The university cannot pay them, pay for their travel or any of their expenses while they're on their way or leaving the university. So seeing the amount of kids that have, at least on the offensive line, which is, again, I'm assuming where this question's coming from, these kids wouldn't be making return unofficial visits over and over and over again, unless they actually believe that they could come to Nebraska, because otherwise they'd just be wasting money. So right there, I think it shows you that there's potential, and for whatever odd reason that Nebraska has kind of struck out in the past, at some point that's going to flip. They missed out on Williams Winery out of high school, but obviously he turned around in the transfer portal. So even if they don't get them out of high school, you're still seeing, at least in that particular recruitment, that Nebraska at least stuck out enough in high school that they were able to, kind of spin around the block the next year and get him. So they're just going to keep swinging at it, and at some point it's going to work out. So, is that our final question there?
Yeah, that was the final question from the Instagram / YouTube.
Okay.
So
perfect. Okay, I guess I don't know how in depth you want to get in spring ball here, but just looking at it, I think the spring game, obviously it's a weird time of year. The Elite Eight's going on at the same, at some point that next day, and obviously, the Huskers have the opportunity to beat Iowa here on Thursday and then end up finding themselves playing on Saturday. So I think it's going to go under the radar to some extent. I think that's good. Either way, it's the days of selling out the Memorial Stadium for a spring game are over. I know it only happened once, but I don't think anybody from the university is necessarily expecting anything more than like, I think 10,000 would be a good crowd if I'm going to throw out a number. So it's going to fly under the radar a little bit, but there are tons of storylines out there. Seeing how that offensive line looks in person, against a real defense going live reps is going to be something that sticks out to me. Anthony Calandra obviously is what we talked about as well. And then I think even a guy like Quasi Gilmore Gilmer, how he looks, I'm sure, I think it would be good to kind of throw him a deep ball and see what he does. Because obviously he's proved to be good in the Big Ten. And now he's going to be playing against theoretically a lot of the players that are returning from the second or third best secondary in the country last year. So I think there's tons of storylines on the offensive side of the ball, but that's probably mine, I guess. Yeah, I'm sure you have a couple that are different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly excited to see what this defense looks like. It's a new scheme, and definitely 3-3-5. I'm pretty sure it's a 4-2-5, so it's a little bit different with four down linemen, and two interiors and then two edges, mostly, instead of having linebackers that overhang edge defenders like that jack. So yeah, it's going to be super exciting. I mean, I'm going to watch it. I mean, I wish I could be there in person. Nebraska basketball, it's been awesome watching them this year, and they're not done yet. But my first love was Nebraska football, so I'm always excited to watch the Huskers get out there and play. So yeah, I mean, I'll be watching everything. I mean, there's so many things that I'm excited to see. It's year 4 Mountain Rule. It's going to be serious. It's got to happen. It's got to happen this year. Just because I mean, 4 years at a school, especially with the transfer portal now, you gotta start showing something. I mean, they've gone to the bowl game last 2 years, but as fans, we feel like it's been a little bit underwhelming, especially with the schedule they had last year. So yeah, and this next year's schedule, which we'll probably talk about in another video once we get closer to the season, but it's not very friendly. So I guess I'm just excited to see what the D-line looks like too, and then the O-line, just because the trenches are so important, and new coaching and bunch of new players in the D-line too. So yeah, I'm super excited for the spring game on Saturday.
Yeah, it's really going to be everyone's kind of first look at such a different team from last year, which I think in some ways people are scared of, but a lot of other ways there's serious reason for optimism heading into 2026. Within reason, I think it is fair to say that a lot of Nebraska fans are kind of in wait and see mode on this team. In anything that they see in spring, they're going to say, if anything good on the opposite side of the ball happens, they're going to say, well, how good is the defense? If anything good on the defensive side of the ball happens, they're going to say, well, how good is the offense? You don't really know until you truly play a real game against a Big Ten opponent. Yeah. But I do think there's going to be a ton of things to talk about. And just getting to see these new coaches and whatever it was, 16 or 18 transfers in here in their first kind of live action reps in a Nebraska jersey, I think it's gonna be super fun. So we'll definitely talk about this the football schedule at some point. But I think for now, those are the storylines we're looking at heading in. And then the schedule for the rest of the week, I do believe we are planning on reacting to the Iowa-Nebraska game probably on Friday. That'll be our next video. And then, potentially Elliot and I will hop back on here over the weekend and react to the things that we took away from the spring game. So trying to make it a busy week, and hopefully you guys enjoy